You need more than guts to be a gangster. You need good ideas. And I hope these ideas help you become the gangster you want to be. Hey, good afternoon, Marvel Strike Force community. And for those who have seen Will Ferrell's Spirited movie, a special good afternoon to you guys. This is GangsterKT, and this is my first attempt at a YouTube content video. Appreciate you watching this, and bear with me as I learn this a little bit. But felt like there was a gap right now in the content creator community around roster optimization. Overall, there's so many great war videos, cruiser videos, use T4s here, but just the overall approach to roster optimization, I felt like there was a gap, and Philosopher used to do that very well with his videos. I always respected that guy a ton. And so in honor of him, this is my first video, Glock Watch, GangsterKT's tribute to Philosopher, focused on daily account optimization. So let's get right into this. And number one, we need to cover the mob rules, how you approach your roster optimization. For those who watch Fight Club, everyone should know this, but rule number one, do not talk about the mob. Rule number two, you want to make your PvP teams as big as possible and your raid teams as big as needed. So if you're clearing the Doom raid that you're in and will be for the foreseeable future, I'd recommend pausing there, with the death seat exception, and focusing on those PvP teams where that incremental gains really pay more value. Rule number three, prioritize the newest characters, draw the line, and don't invest below it. So in my roster save squads, I do all the teams in order that they go, and I literally draw an imaginary line and say, I'm not going to invest below this. These guys' glory days are over. And it's all about the new characters in the game right now. There are some rare exceptions to that if you really need a little more power somewhere to win an important counter in War and Crucible. But in general, I do not break that rule. My Doom is level 87 from when the level cap increased. I'd love to have him level 90, but he is below that line, and I'm not working on him now. Mob rule number four, identify the power on the teams and focus there. Don't just take everyone up equally. So some good examples of this, Shadowlands, when they first came out, you really only needed to power up White Tiger and Night Nurse, and you got probably 95% of the value out of that team by just working on those two characters. I think another great example of that right now is Underworld. If you have a big Taskmaster, as long as your other guys have the T3s on them, and are maybe level 75, they can do crazy punch-ups. I have a video on my channel of my 700K-ish Underworld team punching up on about a 1350K Dormammu, Eternals, Entangled Web team in War, and Underworld just handles them easily. They are amazing with the counters they can do, and especially because from a resource prioritization standpoint, you really just need to focus on one character. If you want to do crazy punch-ups on Dormhold and on the biggest meta team, sure, you'll need them all there, but you can get 95% of that value with a pretty minimal investment. Rule number five, don't spend money on a game unless you can afford it and love the game. Game resources should not be normalized to dollars, as it should be dependent on each person's disposable income and their interest in the game as a hobby. If you do want to spend money, I'd highly recommend buying one of each of the new $50 character offers, as this is the best purchase currently in the game because of the importance of new characters. Besides when Scopely makes those decimal point Jeff mistakes, and there's offers that are too good to pass up. So this is not taking a shot at anyone else who normalizes currency and other resources into dollars. I think it's important to understand the relative value of different resources and currency, and dollars makes a lot of sense, right? No pun intended, but we all know that. We know what a dollar is, so that made sense to normalize to that. But I don't think that should be confused with actually saying those are really worth that dollar amount, because that is different for every person. So those are our rules. Please follow them, and let's move on. So let's go through who right now is gaining favor, which mobsters on our team are on the rise. And I tried not to just pick the obvious ones, right? Everyone needs to prioritize the horseman teams, take them up to T16, take them up to T17 when you can. We all know why. We all know that's important for Apocalypse. So kind of looking outside that box and the ones who really are standing out to me. So number one is Underworld. I talked about it earlier, but they are just amazing in War and Crucible right now. Taskmaster and Kingpin both have uses elsewhere, with Kingpin's summons auto taunt, similar to what Red Guardian or Drax would provide. And then with Taskmaster's first turn blind, I think they're both going to have a lot of staying power. Additionally, like I mentioned, a little investment goes a long way. So you can just power up your Taskmaster and watch the crazy results. Second monster on the ride right now is Kestrel. And this actually goes against my mob rule number 3 of only investing in the new characters, but let me explain why. So with some of the newer tunes, with Dormammu, with Crucible rune bonuses having revive, Kestrel's ult and the mechanic where if she kills a character they can't revive is just becoming more and more valuable. Additionally, Kestrel has a high likelihood of being required for the Strike Scourge team, and she's still on the meta raid team for the Doom skill lanes. I have excess skill gear because I've really been prioritizing the Death Seed. So if you're in a similar situation and looking for a little more punch there, I do think Kestrel is still a really valuable investment. Mobster number 3 on the rise, and again, I'm digging deep here, but Secret Avengers. A big part of this is they are rumored to be additions to Secret Avengers coming soon. Shout out to Tana. His rumors are pretty amazing and usually accurate, and I put a lot of faith into those. Although I wouldn't power up my Secret Avengers right now unless I was struggling with the skill nodes and the Doom raids, which, let's be honest, those are horrible. And we probably all struggle with them a little bit. They're still the best skill raid solution, and Captain Sam is useful in many game modes. I'm actually finding more uses for him right now in Crucible than I feel like I ever have before, and seem to be using him more every day because of that speed he provides and also the ability energy. But it's mainly about that speed with his ultimate, and he's fast, so he can usually do that early. So let's look at the other side. What mobsters are we pouring the cement for? These guys are about to drown, and let's not invest in them. So number 1 is Web Warriors. With Scopely doing the double buff on Rebirth here, it shows they're forcing the issue. Additionally, with 3 new raid teams out fairly recently and rumors for the other 2 Origins having raid team additions coming soon, I think that a new Doom raid is probably, or a new raid in general, is probably in the near future, at which point I do not expect Web Warriors to be viable. Additionally, they aren't valuable at all in other game modes. I know when I first started Crucible, I thought they might be creative with their dodges and hurt on some efficiency points, but the Bionic Avengers just make that completely null and void, as well as many other teams can easily count them. So don't overthink it. Don't get tricky. Do not use Web Warriors. They are sinking. Team also sinking right now is Axeman. It's pretty obvious with the Death Seed being used for the mutant raid nodes, and with Age of X now being over for Crucible, the Axemen are finding their way quickly to the bottom of the river. The third team that is having the cement poured for them right now is the Hero Asgards. I feel they are very disappointing as a war defense specialized team with many easy counters. You know, they sure aren't to defense what Underworld or what Undying or some of those other teams are to offense. The Eternals counter them easily. If I get an Eternals used on mine, I feel like that's a win. That match can go south a little bit, but I think most people have figured out other ways to mitigate that RNG and make that a very easy counter, as long as a lot of other easy counters for them. Additionally, they were valuable in the Scourge, but with the frequency that the Scourges are coming out, and with the Avengers also being useful on those same nodes now and being a better investment overall, their day in the sun is over and they are sinking to the bottom of the river. So next, let's talk about those new Mafia recruits out there, either the members who are looking to join our team or those who maybe have changed themselves up and reworked themselves a little bit to be a better part of the team. So first is Wakandans. I personally would recommend still investing in War Dogs if you're into War and Crucible. With the new Room 6 Crucible bonus, the Wakandans are almost mandatory if you want to play up in the Masters, Leagues, or similar in Crucible. Although I think we are still figuring out how important incremental gains are on them. With all those room bonuses, is a 6 Red Star really going to help? Is a couple extra levels going to be a big deal? So still learning that, but because they are so valuable in both of my favorite PvP game modes, I do still recommend investing in Wakanda, and especially War Dogs. If you're richer than the mob, it sounds like right now M'Baku and Killmonger are probably the optimal team on Crucible defense, but I think that's a very small gain unless you just have excess resources, so it's better to double dip with the 5 War Dog members only. Second team and new recruits, the Death Seed are joining us, so investing in them is a no-brainer right now because of the Apocalypse requirements. While they aren't the top meta in Crucible and War, Magneto's early blind and some of the other dynamics on that team do make them be very relevant in those game modes and probably have some staying power in those game modes as well. I will say with them, I have them all at T16 and level 90 right now, Definitely working on the blue ISO 4 for them, but I'm not really in the hurry to get them any stronger because they are just destroying the Doom Raid nodes that I need, and I'd rather put those resources into trying to get the Gamma team up to T17, even though it is different origins, or Unlimited specifically for mutant gear, or the ones who are more meta in their game modes. But eventually we'll have to take all the Death Seed up to those levels too, so something worth doing. I'm just personally not in as big of a hurry for them as the other Horseman teams, due to the other teams being more valuable in the game modes I like. Number 3 new team, Masters of Evil. So again, investing in Masters of Evil right now is a no-brainer, especially if you like Crucible. Scopely basically said they're going to be mandatory, announcing they'll be needed for the next legendary character. But I expect Apocalypse to be better than this character due to the year-long unique investment for him, and probably better than the next few legendaries. So while Masters of Evil are worth investing in if you have the resources, I would not build them at the expense of your teams needed for Apocalypse, the Horseman teams. But once you have them where you want them, I think Masters of Evil is definitely a great investment, especially if you like Crucible. So next thing I want to cover, now that we've talked about our mom members, we got to build up our arsenal. So how do we grow them? And this is mainly gold promo investment advice. So I have a little different approach to red stars. Just for context, I do buy that $50 new character offer once each time, but besides that, I'm completely free to play. I use my money in other places in my personal life, but that $50 purchase does allow me to play the game with the new characters at a different level than I otherwise would, that I really enjoy. But again, just for overall context and why resource investment is so important to me, because I just don't buy it. So my approach to Red Star, and I think what's most important out of anything, is to commit early. Don't waste weeks or months pondering an upgrade, as that is the most valuable time for that upgrade. So one thing I always really appreciated about Philosopher was he did put things in terms of investment, and I think that is more than appropriate here. And why it's kind of tough to hear, a character's most value is on day one, and that value just slowly trickles down over time. Normally they'll be valuable, 6 to 12 months at a minimum, especially depending on the character or team, but you want to get that value as early as you can. So when Gamora was one of the most powerful characters on Infinity Watch, I thought about doing her 7 red star upgrade for I think about 6 months. And then I finally did it and I was happy with it. I loved it, but I sure wish I'd done it 6 months earlier. It would provide a lot of value. So I commit early, I don't second guess it, and I move on. I think it's important to focus on rework tunes on meta teams that have high yellow stars, assuming that they're one of those characters that gets value from red stars, typically like the damagers or even the tanker healer, depending on the team. The last thing, and this is different than what most people recommend, but I actually feel the 7 red star upgrade is extremely underrated, and I do those probably more than anything else when I do have the gold promos for them. So everyone mentions that the cost is 150 versus 100 gold promos, so a 50% increase over a 6 red star, but you also get a 15% increase to your stats from the 7 red star, whereas you only get a 10% increase from the 6 red star. So you're kind of getting what you're paying for there. And in general, I've always felt in this game, it's most important to have your best characters as big as you can. PvP in this game is all about your character's power relative to those other characters. If your focus is a little higher, you're going to land those debuffs, and it's going to make a huge difference in PvP. So I'd rather have my best, most important characters for those game modes at 7, even though it is more expensive, than having them at just 6 red star. It's very hard to come up with an accurate comparison here, but the best that I've been able to think of is if you had 500 gold promo credits and 5 characters that are at 5 red stars, you could either take 2 of them up fully to the 7 red star, or you could take all 5 of them up to the 6 red star. Again, there's a lot of nuance, a lot of exception to these comments, but in general, I'd rather have my 2 best as high as possible for the PvP modes than have my 5 best at 6 red stars. So based on that, the top gangsters that I would recommend for gold promos, and this is in order. Number 1 is Spider Weaver. Anyone that's in the top rewards bracket where those Spider Weaver shards are, probably got those 4,000 shards and has a 7 yellow star Spider Weaver. That is extremely early in her tenure to get 7 yellow stars, especially as one of those custom scopely characters like Kestrel or like Deathpool. They're tough to get stars for those guys, and most of us now have a 7 yellow star Spider Weaver. I think taking her to 7 red star is an absolute no-brainer. She's so valuable in Crucible, so valuable in War, valuable just in any game mode out there, being used every day in Arena. Again, it's early in her tenure in the mob, and I think it is a no-brainer to make her as big as possible. Anyone else on this list, I actually might not do right now. Part of that's because I'm out of gold promos from Spider Weaver, and some of these on the list I did earlier, but I'd probably save mine at this point unless you just have extra gold promos and really want to bring up some other characters. So number 2 on this list is Icarus. I think out of any character, while he is a little older, he has the most value out of the 7 or 6 red star upgrade than anyone else. And that's for 2 reasons. Number 1 is his ultimate. As you know, if he kills someone with his ult, he gets to ult again. And that is incredibly powerful, can completely change the dynamics of the match. So you want him as big as possible to take advantage and get that second ult more frequently. Also, as you guys know, Icarus has the crazy ability to take debuffs, and when he gets to lower health, he just shakes all that off. So there is nothing more gangster than a Taylor Swift reference in this video. But the haters are gonna hate. Ugh. All right, anyway, so Icarus, again, I think is a great investment and someone I'd highly recommend, although I don't have my Icarus at 7 yellow star. When I do, I doubt I will take him to 7. It was a no-brainer for me to take him to the 6th red star when I got that 6 yellow star. Number 3 is someone I did take to 7 red star recently, and that's Gambit. With Age of X ending, I felt that Gambit's value was going to be much higher, and that extra ability on him was going to be needed to help still make them impenetrable in Cosmic Crucible. Additionally, with him coming out in the Cosmic Crucible store, I felt that he was farmable and able to get to 7 yellow stars pretty early in his tenure. And again, I like to commit early. I want to get as much value out of that as I can. So I put the 7 red star on Gambit. That was probably about a month ago, a couple weeks ago. So not sure if I'd still do that. I'd probably try and understand this new Cosmic Crucible meta a little better and how important that is. But I still think Gambit is a great character worth considering. Next on the list is Taskmaster. We talked about him. You make Taskmaster big, the underworld go nuts. So I think I've said enough about that, but he is who I'd recommend next. And part of that is because War is my favorite mode. I just love killing it with my gangster mates and my alliance and tearing it up there. It's the most fun I have in the game. Next after that is Hela. Again, probably a little War bias there, but you get the 2-for-1 with Hela. If you have a zombie Iron Man, he doesn't need to be big, but the bigger the Hela you have, the better that duo works together. I think they will have a lot of staying power because they use the other team's power against them. And so even as bigger and bigger characters come out and Hela and Zombie and Iron Man are a little weaker, they're still going to make those big characters attack each other. And so I think Hela is still a good investment. The next one I have is Hulk. I actually did Hulk, I think 2 days after he was reworked recently. As soon as I saw how crazy he was with that Gamma rework, I committed early and I immediately went and put a 7th red star on Hulk. I did already have him at 6 red star. I haven't regretted it at all. Admittedly, I'm not sure if I had Braun at 7 yellow stars, which one of those 2 I do now, or maybe even A-Bomb. But I never regretted the Hulk one. And I know people out there probably don't have Braun at 7 yellow stars yet. So I still think if you have enough gold promos to get through the rest of this list, Hulk is a good investment. So last but not least is Black Panther. Similar to Icarus, he just gets a ton of value out of that red star upgrade because of the same dynamic where if he kills someone, something extra happens. For Black Panther, it's 100% speed. We've all seen it. He just winds up, he attacks, and he is just so valuable. Additionally, when you're fighting them, he's usually the first character you want to kill. So when your opponents are fighting yours, you want your Black Panther to be as big as possible. So those are who I'd recommend for the good gold promos. Last but not least, I want to cover the future of the mob. How do we sustain this? How do we keep growing and get better and be more effective? So the main thing right now, and this has changed a lot after the past few months, but use your resources with events in mind. So save golden cores to double dip during events. So if you truly like min-maxing, this is the advice I give you here. I think it's the best way to play. It's how I'm playing, but I'm not going to sugarcoat it. It sucks. It's really frustrating. I did the $50 offer on Agent Venom. I was so excited to see how he worked with the Rebirth team, but that was right when the gold spending event was announced. And I just sat there and had a level 1 Green ISO 5 Agent Venom on my team for about a week before I finally started powering him up. And the excitement left, right? That wasn't fun. That wasn't how I wanted to play, but it was optimal. And I do get a lot of enjoyment out of min-maxing. So that's what I did. I hope this direction stops. I hope they take all the feedback they're getting on these things. There was a game out there called Idle Heroes that I played years ago. It's maybe changed now, but in that game at the time, you had huge incentive to use a lot of the power-up mechanisms during a couple of days of the month. And so those days were really fun. You got to go nuts from everything you'd saved all month. But the other 28 days were boring. And after playing that game a few months, I just quit because it wasn't as exciting. It didn't keep me engaged all month long. So I'm nervous about this direction that Scopely's heading here. But if we want to grow our mob as big as possible, it is the right way to play right now. I used to recommend the 50 core upgrades, spending 200 cores to get that energy every day. But now I don't think that's even worth it, even though that campaign energy is valuable, because I'd rather use those cores to help me with the events because of how much more valuable getting those new characters early really is. So appreciate you guys watching this. Again, this is my first attempt at a video. Hopefully I will get better here, but really excited to be doing this. Really hope I can bring you guys kind of a new look on content and some content that's maybe not out there prevalently as much. So I have a ton of respect for the other content creators, and I hope this gangster can find their way into your hearts as well. So what I want to leave with, I can't guarantee any advice, but I will give you my word that this is the best advice I have. All I have in this world is my balls and my word, and I don't break them from no one. Peace.